These two questions are related, and I often find questions are related. So if I ask one and credit it to somebody and you wrote pretty much the same thing, I try to get them both, and if I don't, I certainly apologize. But Cindy Lucin says the politically correct crowd's heads are exploding listening to Mr. Trump every day. In your opinion, is the Donald doing damage to the Republican image, as some are saying, or is he helping inoculate us from the PC virus that has infected our Western culture? And similarly, Ray Malzwicki asks, on his podcast show, Klavan kicked Trump to the curb and called him despicable. Do you maintain that he's a better despicable than Hillary Rodham Clinton, and does he still get your potential vote? Yeah, if I'm going to have a lunatic Marxist, a lunatic narcissist making all these confusing statements, I'd much rather have them be a capitalist than a communist corrupt felon. So yes, he gets my vote over Hillary Rodham Clinton. Yes, completely. And when Donald Trump says things like we need to use the internet to shut down free speech, this should give you some very, very serious doubts about this guy, and I have serious doubts about this guy. But there's a bigger issue here. And of course, it took the likes of an actual genius, a serious genius, to point it out to me. And I'm just going to repeat what he said here, and that genius is Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh said, listen, he basically said that Trump is playing the media like a Stradivarius, and he is. And I think Rush's point, certainly would be my point, would be if Donald Trump can destroy the credibility of the media and simply laughing at and ignoring the PC howls of protest and just bullying on, then that's even worth losing an election over. Rush didn't say that, but I'm saying it. The reason that we vote the way we do is because the media controls the information base. All this political correctness is shoved down our throats. As I pointed out earlier today with Stefan, in 2004, oh my gosh, Evan Thomas, who was an editor at Newsweek magazine, said in a slip of the tongue, basically, for somebody who was paying attention, maybe not on his team, he said what everybody knew to be true, that in 2004, Evan Thomas, who was the editor at Newsweek, said, I think media bias is going to be worth 15 points at the polls. 15. So I then went and said, well, if the media bias towards helping John Kerry who's not exactly the golden candidate, if John Kerry was going to get a 15-point tailwind in 2004, then Barack Obama's tailwind must be 30 points, 40 points at least, given how far they bend over backwards for him and just completely suppress news that's detrimental to him. But let's just say that Evan Thomas was right, and let's say that Barack Obama got the same 15 points that he estimated John Kerry was going to get in 2004. If you take the 2008 electoral map and you remove 15 points from Barack Obama's totals in every state and add 15 percentage points to John McCain's total in every state, you find that in 2008, Obama wins the District of Columbia, he wins Delaware, and that's all he wins. It's President McCain with 503 electoral votes. 503 is what he gets if press bias, as estimated by the press, were eliminated. In other words, if we all got accurate news, not conservative news, just accurate news, we would vote like Kansas. The country would never elect a Democrat again, ever. So that's the real threat to the republic, is the fact that the news media, newspapers, the press, was once the greatest defender of this republic because they were the immune system that identified, located, and destroyed corruption of either party wherever it was found. And if it was a liberal paper attacking conservative politicians or a Republican paper attacking Democratic politicians, it didn't matter. The work got done. Daylight was shined on these animals, and the public got information, and they voted accordingly. But for 20, 30 years now, because of the leftist infiltration of all of our universities, but specifically journalism schools, the press is now the audiovisual department of the Democratic Party. And if Donald Trump is able to destroy that, the value of being able to destroy that is almost incalculable for our side. And that's why the press is so completely terrified of Donald Trump. Now, there's another aspect to this that I think is really, really interesting. I'm pretty sure Rush made the identification of the press as the priesthood, but I was talking with Stefan today in that interview, which we'll post the next day or two. And he said something very simple and really interesting. He said, you cannot have a monarchy without a priesthood. And I think that's true throughout history. In other words, if you're going to enslave people, if you are going to coerce people to do your will over time, you need two different elements. You need the element on the ground, which is the applied violence of the state. So let's say it's Henry II, who's a baron, he's a vicious, violent murderer, and he's ready to go out there and lop off some heads and provide the physical force necessary to win on the streets. You need that, and that can make you king, but it can't keep you king. Because if people are starving in their little mud huts because they bring you all of the potatoes and all of the chickens that they're able to raise on their own, because it's their duty and you're the king, then in order to survive as a monarchy or any other system, it doesn't have to be a monarchy, it can be an emir, it can be a pasha, it can be an emperor, it can be whatever. In order for that to survive, you have to have a secondary input which affects stability, and that is the religious class. So what happens in the Middle Ages in medieval times is, you have a person who becomes king, and he's ruling by violence. But he really is just one guy, and he's got some guards, and he's got some, feudal lords underneath him. He's got a few dukes and barons who are on his side, but they all want to be king too, so that can go either way. What really keeps the king in power is the priesthood, because the priesthood says to the common person, number one, it's God's will that he is the king, and it's God's will that you're a serf or a peasant who goes out and works for the king. That's God's will. And furthermore, if you do this and go along with God's will, then in paradise, when you die, you'll live just like a king too. And if he's an evil king, he'll get his reward and he'll go to hell. And if you're a virtuous person, you'll live in paradise like the king does. All you have to do is wait till you die, and then it's just going to happen. And so the priesthood protects the monarchy, and then, needless to say, the monarchy protects the priesthood. Then King Henry gives enormous, huge tracts of land to the church. And he gives them lots and lots of money, and they get gold-plated everything. And the church and the political leadership, the religious leadership and the political leadership, get into orbit around each other. And they constantly reinforce each other. Now, in modern politics, when the press was an unbiased, even if it wasn't unbiased, when there were mutual bias at work, when the press was functioning as the immune system to seek out corruption in this country, then you had a reasonably honest republic. Because if you a Republican president and you do something heinous, maybe your Republican newspaper won't cover you, but the Democratic one will, and vice versa. But if it's all Democrats and all progressives, then what you have is you have a priesthood. And the priesthood is not just protecting and anointing Democrats, although it's mostly doing that. Rush was making the point that it protects and anoints anybody inside the Beltway. That it is a operational mode that sitting people like the Speaker of the House, Paul, whose name was, man, I'm losing, man, I'm just getting old. That basically the press also protects the Republicans inside the Beltway as long as they agree with the press. See, that's it. If Rush said the press decides who's destroyed, the press decides who succeeds. The press decides, and they'll throw Republicans a few bone, and Boehner can stay, and they're not going to look too deeply into Boehner, and not going to look too deeply into McConnell, because it's in the interest of the progressives to have a Boehner and a McConnell. It's what you want. If I'm a Gator fan, I want the Seminoles to have the worst coach in the nation, and I want to keep him there. Last thing I want to do is go, this coach is awful, we got to get rid of him. I want him to be a terrible coach. And so Rush says that the priesthood of the press protects and anoints those inside the Beltway and attacks anybody who might upset this equation. And Rush said that, Paul Ryan, sorry. Rush said that that what Trump is doing is he is simply walking past the priesthood. He's simply walking past them. He simply refuses to give them any power over him. And because he's not willing to bend a knee to the press's opinion, he, in one stroke, has eliminated the power of the press. I talked with this about Stefan today, too. And Stefan said, well, and we get to communicate with each other through the internet so that, the candidates, the Trump can go around the press. But Trump is much smarter than that. Ted Cruz can go around the press, and Rand Paul can go around the press, and we can talk to them on the internet about them. But Trump is much smarter than that. Trump understands that the media so well that he understands that the media's goal is to make him ashamed of what he said and therefore have power over what he says. He's not willing to do that. But the genius of Trump and the press is Trump understands what the press's food source is. And you can't run away from your food source. Every single member of the liberal press despises Donald Trump. And frankly, there's a lot that he says that's worthy of being despised. But what Trump understands is that the press despises him, but the Trump understands what the press's food source is, and the food source for the press is attention. The press needs readers, and they need viewers. The press survives as an organism, as a corporate organism, but as an organism, they need viewership and readership. And Donald Trump is a huge food source to them. So the press can't just walk away from Donald Trump. Every single one of them may hate him to their bones, to the marrow of their bones. But if Donald Trump comes out of a bathroom on a rest stop on Interstate 80 someplace, there's going to be 60 vans and helicopters there to record every single moment of it. You see? He has them by the neck. He's got them by the neck. And he is playing them. And to the degree that Donald Trump is forget attacking the press, because we've seen a few people who attacked the press. Last cycle, Newt Gingrich attacked the press and criticized the press. And Ted Cruz stood up and called the press out and attacked the press, which is the beginning of the fight. But the end of the fight is when you mock the press. And that's advanced work. And I think, frankly, it's kind of like this idea of swordlessness that Sun Tzu talked about. So criticizing the press for being biased is like a level 1 fight. Laughing at the press, which they cannot bear, is a level 2 fight because it's showing that the press is irrelevant. It's showing that the press isn't powerful. I can laugh at you because you've got no power over me. It's like that Bain line, Well, we're the press, and we think it's contemptible what you've just said, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump says, and this gives you power over me? No, it doesn't give him any power over me at all. He doesn't care. The third level of fighting against the press is this idea of swordlessness, where you're no longer criticizing them and you're no longer mocking them. And that state of Satori is ignoring them, is just pretending they're not there. Despicable, disgraceful, unbelievable, racist, blah, 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 blah. You can criticize they're biased, or you can laugh at them. I think Donald Trump's finest moment in the campaign so far was when somebody said, Mr. Trump, what do you have to say about the protesters outside? And he says, what are you talking about? He says, the protesters outside protesting your appearance here. He said, there's 7,000 people in this auditorium. There's 6 people outside. You want to lead with that? What organization are you from anyway, ma'am? She goes, I'm with CNN. And he goes, CNN. Boom. Boom. It's over. It's over for them. What do you mean, CNN? He's doing to CNN what the progressives do to Fox. Where do you hear the story? Fox. When he says CNN, what he's done is he's basically said to the American people, it's okay. He's giving them permission to say CNN is a biased organization that is run by far leftists. It is not the impartial, authoritative statement of fact that they've been telling you that it is. It simply is CNN. Marvel Comics. It's the Santa Monica shopper and coupon guide. CNN. He is the boy in the parade that is saying that the emperor doesn't have any clothes, and he's making everybody realize. I have to come back to this analogy, which I've used hundreds of times, because there was a part of it that I don't think I completely understood, and I certainly wasn't explaining hard enough. Here's the real message of the emperor's new clothes. Everybody knows the story. There's an emperor who's rather vain and very vain and rather stupid. And these two con artists come in as tailors, and they say, we would like to present the most elaborate and most magical fabrics that we've ever created to His Majesty. So they let him in, they open up a trunk, and they hold it up, and the two of them together are saying, Your Majesty, look at this shine. The thing that's most remarkable about this cloth, Your Majesty, is that the true beauty of it can only be appreciated by those people who are the smartest and have the greatest sense of taste. And, of course, the guy doesn't see anything, but already the fact that one guy says, isn't it beautiful? And the other goes, yes, look at this, with a remarkable thing. So then Your Majesty is going to say, well, I must be an idiot because I can't see it, so what does the emperor do? He goes, oh, that's really quite nice. Bring that over. Let me have a closer look at it. Feel the texture, Your Majesty. Feel how smooth the satin is. Look at the way the blue and the gold come out. Oh, it's marvelous. I've never seen anything like it. So he gets out on the parade, and he starts going down the parade, and this rumor has spread to everybody in the city that the only people that cannot see this fabric are people who are either too stupid, too disloyal, or too unsophisticated, too vulgar. Here's the point of the story I never, ever, ever seem to emphasize strongly enough. When you hear the story of the emperor's new clothes, you assume, on some level, in a quick telling of the story, that the people in the parade route see the clothes, and that only the boy at the end doesn't see the clothes, and then when he says he's not wearing any clothes, they suddenly don't see them. But that's not how it works. The grain, the fulcrum of the story of the emperor's new clothes is, put yourself in the position of one person along that parade route. You know, you don't know. This is the power of it. You see the parade coming along, and you see that the emperor is naked. He's not wearing any clothing. You don't think necessarily that there's something wrong with you, but everybody around you is going, oh my goodness gracious, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so wonderful. So what do? You already know that if you stand up and say, hey, I can't see anything, you assume by everybody else going, oh, the colors. You think either I'm completely insane. That's what you think. You think I'm completely insane. I'm the only person here who can't see this. There must be something wrong with me. And so now this is where the con works or doesn't work. You can't see it. You know you can't see it. You're embarrassed, terrified, and ashamed that you can't see it. But since everybody else sees it, what is your action? What do? You stand there and go, spectacular, spectacular. It's even more beautiful in the sunlight than it was when it was in the shade. And your response to cover the fact that you're not in on this game, your pretend response is what feeds everybody else on the parade route. Everybody else on the parade route hears people like you going, oh, it's wonderful. This is social proof in a nutshell. It's the power of peer pressure and social proof is the fact that, look, I don't believe this, but I can't be seen to be the only person in this house, in this entire empire, who's so stupid and so vulgar that I can't see it. I can't be that guy. I've got to pretend to see it because I don't want people to know how stupid and vulgar I am. And so what you do is you say, oh, yes, yeah. And your actions, by going along with the lie, cues other people for their social proof. And the reason it's a little boy who speaks up at the end of the parade and says he's not wearing any clothes. The reason it's little boy is because little boy doesn't know about social proof yet. He doesn't know about peer pressure. He doesn't know about the neighbors getting together. He doesn't know about gossiping. He doesn't know about how nasty people can be. He doesn't know about all the stories they talk about. This guy's quite an idiot. And yes, I pretend to be nice to her, but she's really just a nasty bitch and so on. Doesn't know any of this stuff. He just looks as not wearing any clothes. And the second that kid says that, he doesn't have to go down the rows and convince everybody the argument. What the boy does by saying he's not wearing any clothes is the boy gives everybody in the kingdom the permission. He gives them the permission to say, I don't see it either. If that little boy can't see it, I'm not alone. I'm not the only crazy person here. I'm not the only person too stupid or vulgar to see these spectacular clothes. If that boy can't see it, I can't see it either. He grants them permission to get away from the groupthink of this social pressure, of this social proof and peer pressure, and the entire illusion comes down like that. So, to the degree that Donald Trump can go, CNN, pff, I don't think any of us can put a value on how powerful that is. Because as I said earlier, 15 points at the polls for Barack Obama, it's 30 without a heartbeat. It's 20 or 30 for Hillary Clinton. They will lose every single state without the news media. I did the math. He won Delaware and D.C. in 2008 with 15 points of press bias. It's President McCain with 503 electoral votes, and McCain ran the worst campaign I've ever seen. So this is what social proof does. And to the degree that Donald Trump is destroying the credibility of the press by simply saying, you people are all naked. I know you've told everybody that you're the sole arbiters of truth. I know you've told everybody that we just report the facts as they are on the ground and we are completely impartial. I know that's what you're selling, and I know that's the con you're running, but it just ain't so. You guys are naked. You're not wearing any clothes. You're not only as biased as anybody else, you are the princes of bias. Your entire operation is based on bias. Then the game's over. When you can just go, CNN. He didn't just go, Des Moines Daily Register. He went, CNN. The power of that is absolutely magnificent. And Donald Trump deserves a great deal of credit for that. And then I start thinking, you know what, this could be okay, it could be really exciting. And then he starts saying things like, we need to shut down the internet so these ISIS groups can't communicate with each other. Well, what about free speech? And then he says, it's free speech. And it's like, Donald, you've got actual greatness in you. You've got actual greatness. You say things and you have the one indispensable virtue, which is courage. You have the courage to be unpopular. You have the courage to be despised. That courage is the great single virtue in politics. But then your judgment is so poor and your ability to discriminate between issues is so poor that you completely destroy all of the enormous amount of credit and support that you deserve to get through being so honest and courageous. You destroy it by saying things like, free speech. I just don't know what to do. I don't know. So I'll just answer the question in the way it was asked. If it comes down to Clinton or Trump, I'm going with Trump all the way. But I have very, very, very serious and numerous reservations about this guy as an individual. Anyway, I think that's a great question. And hopefully it was a decent answer.